and welcome back to my mobility scooter adventures and my series exploring the River Maun, episode 4. Today I start off at Field Mill Pond, going through Teachfield Park, briefly looking at the history of Mansfield Brewery, Mansfield Bitters, before moving on to see if I can access the River Maun in Woodhouse, the other side of Mansfield Waterworks. So here's Mansfield Field Mill Pond on a lovely sunny day. One of the best parts of Mansfield. As you can see, the swan is laying eggs again. There's about 4 eggs I have counted. And there we have St Mark's Church Hall, followed by the church on the far right, and in the centre of the picture you can see the spire of St John's Church of England Church. There it is, just behind the building, behind the church, or just going out a shot now. To my right I have Imperial Laundry, cater for the needs of hospitals, healthcare, hotels, restaurant and catering. Dry clean service that has been in Mansfield for many years. One of Mansfield's big remaining retailers. You now join us on Teachfield Park, also known as the Meadows. Just there is where the toilets used to be and the blue tractor, which was a popular toy in the park. So now we're going to cross the bridge where the River Maun runs from one side of the park to the other, having come under Nottingham Road. So that's where it enters the park from Nottingham Road, and we'll take a look at the other side. There we go, that is running through the park, heading towards Water Meadows. And on a hot sunny day like it is today, and time of recording on the 16th, it is a super day and many children will be paddling in them. To the left of the picture is the park keeper's cottage, and the garden is looking splendid. One of the better parks in Mansfield, well maintained. A cafeteria, tennis court, bowling, and as you can see in the centre of the picture, there's a game of bowls going on, and there is the tea rooms, well worth a visit. Accessible entrance and a smashing place to visit. I'm sure they will welcome you for a drink. So there is the old paddling pools. Many days paddling in there during the summer holidays, and the stone ones is the old paddling pool. And that half circle, semicircle, is where the new paddling pool was. So we're going to head towards Mansfield Brewery shortly. And the red building in the background, that is Mansfield Territorial. And Water Meadows in the centre, which is built on the site of Mansfield's former Kicker Market, which we looked at in another episode. So there's the river coming down from Nottingham Road and Field Mill Pond. Water level is about normal. And to the far right of the picture, there is the Bowls Hut, Grade 2 listed. And this was another popular spot in the summer holidays for fishing with a little fishing net and paddling. And that's the part of the structure that's still left for an iron foundry that used to stand on the edge of the park. And it had a great big bucket where it could take water up from the stream to use in its works. About there we were looking now was the factory, and we're probably in the middle of the factory, which would have been there in days gone by. And coming round to the left, Mansfield Swing Baths, the original. There we go, there's the TA Centre, and there's Travelodge. That opened in early 2024. And Mansfield Territorial centre, still in very good condition, only around 20 years old. So now we join the stream again from the car park of the social services, and that's the building on the right. Used to be the offices for Mansfield Breweries back in the day, and the building in the centre of the picture with the old roof is Mansfield Brewery. That used to be famous for making Mansfield bitter. And who can remember the adverts? One of the adverts was Mansfield bitter, aimed at men with power tools. Very controversial episodes in the day, and still is. So there's the River Maun again, going on to run down the side of the territorial officers, then crossing the road via a bridge and running down into Mansfield. So let's move on our journey. St Peter's Church there, to the left of it, the Dole office, that was DHSS. This is moved into Mansfield District Council offices on Chesterfield Road, and I do believe the building's been renovated for council offices. Mansfield Brewery was a public house operating company as well as brewer, famous for brands like Mansfield Brewery, Manston's Old Bailey. Other beverages available are brewed by the brand was Riding's Beer and Marksman's Lager. The buildings were founded in 1855, and there we can see one of the first pictures from the site and the team that owned the company. And there's a shot of the brewing towers and one of the big towers of Mansfield beer. On certain days you could smell hops lingering throughout the air in Mansfield, and days like that you knew they were brewing beer. And sadly this is pictures of the site's demise and when it was cleared. The brewery was taken over by Wolverhampton and Douglas Beers in 1999, and the beer was finally moved out of the town and moved to the site where the brands are still made today. The final official date of the closure was the year of 2002, and the town of Mansfield is no longer associated with beer. So, the radio tower for Ace ABC taxis on Central Road in Mansfield. And this is the Maun River again, behind Mansfield Police Station. And this is the best shot I can actually get due to restrictions to the side of the river. From here, the river continues on into Mansfield under the new inner ring road. So I need to go under the road, under the last remaining underpass in Mansfield, via St Peter's Church, and make our way to the nightclub where we can see the river once more. There is the old Conservative Club of Mansfield, now a dance studio. And there we go, we got a picture now. We've got St Peter's Church and St Peter's Hall. Various activities are done in the hall. Local classes put on by West Nottingham College, and I've done many a childcare creche there. So I arrive at the nightclub, and as you can see, the river's there. You can see the pillows, and roughly where that window was, there was a water wheel. And there we can see the flood depth for Mansfield, which we'll learn about later on in this video. So there we go, there's the water wheel, much smaller than the real one of the former Town Mill nightclub. Been derelict now for some years. Various talks about making it into a nightclub again, pub or flats. And that's still being decided by the council, but a nice feature of the nightclub there. There we have the Methodist Chapel in Mansfield. And now we've moved round into the car park, and where we can see the main entrance with the lights, and sadly very much overgrown and in disrepair. Also, I believe this is a listed building, so whoever owns the property has to keep it as it is now and not make any major changes. So you can see it's all boarded up, and unable to get any footage on the inside, and I was unable to find any online. So fingers crossed one day we'll be able to see this building used again, and people of Mansfield can once experience the building, and hopefully it is open to the public. So crossing the road from the pub, we got some houses. These were re-renovated by Mansfield Training Initiative or Mansfield Youth Enterprise in the 90s. And according to deeds, most of the houses were used by a butcher, and slaughterhouses were also in these buildings. So moving on down to the pub, the Bridge Tavern. One of the oldest looking pubs in Mansfield. As you can see, the Mansfield Bitter logo takes pride of place on the front and back of their pub. Now, global warming. In Mansfield, it's been happening for years. So here are the great floods of 68 of Mansfield when the Bridge Tavern got flooded. And there are the people of Mansfield clearing the river to enable the pub to be reopened. And the landlord and patrons are hard at work getting the pub ready to reopen. And we can see Bridge Street and the water, the children are paddling in about knee deep. And there's St Peter's Church. We got another pub to the side, someone fishing in the water, and a couple of females carrying the children on towards the site where the new police station now stands. Moving on to Stocklegate, what also got flooded, and you can see Marks and Spencer's there in the background. Now we're on the Market Square, and back to the other side of Mansfield with the gas works at the back. And yeah, 1968. So let's fast forward now to 73. And again, the Bridge Tavern is flooded, as is the Market Square and other pubs around Mansfield Marketplace, and even someone swimming in the marketplace in Mansfield. This is Lindley's, former of Mansfield. So now let's go right back in time with Doctor Who's TARDIS. The 30th of May 1912 sees Mansfield flooded once more. And it's a common theme for Mansfield in the floods when we have a lot of rain. Back to the present day. And there we go, at the front of the Bridge Tavern, with a river running down at the side of the pub. So let's move on a bit and see the river. So this is heading out towards Mansfield Woodhouse from originating up at Lawn Park and Kingsmill Reservoir, which you can see in episode 1 and 2 of this series exploring the River Maun. And there's the rear of the houses that MTI renovated back in the 90s. And going on, it disappears underneath the road again and was used at metal box for water in their works, with a few opening points throughout the metal box site before moving on to Mansfield Waterworks. So here we are at the site of the former metal box industry in Mansfield, and we can see a tractor and workmen there clearing out the river gullies to reopening them so the public can see them. Now, a flashback to the days of metal box in Mansfield. This site was originally a mustard factory when it first opened, before moving on and being owned by Barringers and then Wallace and Manners, and then becoming the iconic metal box company, which created tins for brands such as Quality Street and Royal Anniversary, containers and trays. Unfortunately, most of the factory was demolished in 2011, apart from the iconic clock tower, which still stands today on the site as a reminder of the site's historic importance. As we can see now, we are looking at the site air raid shelters, and the amount of air raid shelters on the site is interesting, and I've not found any records of what was actually made during the war. And there is some of the iconic machinery which was used in the building to create tins and containers for famous brands. And there we can see some of the tins and artwork created by the metal box. And being in Mansfield, we always had metal box tins in the house. There's someone working very hard to reopen up the River Maun, and it's going to look very nice. But being as we can't go on the site, I've had to turn to Google Earth. So there is the iconic clock tower. And we're taking a good look at that. And what's left of that, maybe I should have cut a bit of that out. So, moving on to find the river. As we can see, it starts just there, a little culvert, and going down towards Mansfield Waterworks. And once again, it disappears under the building, which has now been opened up. So we continue on, and there we see the river once more. Turning around on Google Earth, acknowledgement is given to Google Earth for these images. And it runs a back of the new flats and some of the original metal box buildings that still stand at the bottom of Bath Lane. There we can see a bit of a waterfall behind this building. As it's private land, I was unable to go onto the land to get any pictures, so we'll have to use Google Earth and our imagination. And it goes down the side of this playing field, and there's Sandy Lane, and across this roundabout that goes over to and up to Brunts. And you can see the river goes underneath the road, and there is Mansfield Waterworks in the centre of the picture. And to its right we have the river, and we go back down to the ground to take a quick look at the river at the other side of the road. As you can see, it gradually descends in mini waterfalls, before it goes out to Mansfield Woodhouse, and there is the entrance to the Brunt School and Carbank Park to the side. And there we go, Mansfield Waterworks in the centre, and we'll cross the road now and see where the water comes out. There is a mill further on the right, but unfortunately I couldn't access it on my mobility scooter, so back to Google Earth we go. So now this is my destination where I'm heading, and we'll find out later in the video if I could access this part of the River Maun. And as you can see, the path goes onwards to Clipston. But will I make it to Clipston? Watch to find out. As you can see, the water is very accessible to able-bodied people, but is it to people in mobility scooters and wheelchairs and people who use walking aids? So my apologies about the unsteadiness of the footage. Trying to get a clear angle of the River Maun for everyone. And in the top of the picture is Clipston. So back to Ravensdale. And there is the leisure centre on Sanders Lane. And we've gone on to the park, and to my left is the river. But as we can see, there is no easy way of accessing the river at this point. And unfortunately I couldn't get you any footage of the river. But onwards and upwards as always on my adventures to see what is accessible and which isn't. So this part of the river is not accessible. So now jumping forward, and now I'm on the opposite side of the waterworks and trying to keep to the side of the River Maun, which is on the left. As you can see, a good quality path so far, making it very easy to use the mobility scooter. And apologies with the size of the picture, I accidentally caught the button and it changed the ratio of the video. Still looking good. Will I meet my target today? And looking a bit narrower. I think there could be a problem here, but let's keep going and find out. And the path seems to have disappeared and been taken over by nature. And sadly, this is where I decided to reverse the scooter up, not knowing if I could get through and able to turn around, and I would be stranded. So, unfortunately, this part of the adventure was not possible at the time of filming. But back at the start, there is the bridge and the River Maun, and there's two paths on either side of the river, and at time of filming they were inaccessible. So we start to leave this part of the Maun Valley trail, and we'll try and get to the river at a later date. So let's make our way up Old Mill Lane towards the Four Ways. On our left was once the site of a big B&Q warehouse. This is one of the main roads from the Four Ways from Mansfield Woodhouse, connecting Mansfield to Forest Town. And there is the Four Ways pub, which was once a hospital and known as Mansfield Woodhouse Hospital. It was also a pub for many years, and where the telegraph pole is, had a massive tree. And this used to be a shop, which is now a barber shop. And on July the 20th, 1983, saw an unusual incident, and there is Domino's Pizzas, which used to be the best fish shop in Mansfield and won many awards. So here is a picture of the hospital, better known as the Four Ways Public House, and as you can see, a well-stocked garden, and an even older picture there as the road used to look. It became derelict for many of years before it became a dentist. So here was the incident on the 20th of July 1983. Resulted in 5 firemen suffering cuts and bruises. The shop owners were not injured, and the car driver was reported seriously injured in July 1983. The fire engine was from Mansfield attending an Oaks call. So here is the miners' rescue building on Woodhouse Road in Mansfield, which opened its doors on Limmy Street in Mansfield Woodhouse in 1952 as part of the company's continuing growth in the area, serving the collieries with a quality rescue service. The station once had doors which was like the fire station's doors, like in the picture now, which allowed rapid deployment of rescue vehicles like emergency winders, generators, and other equipment that would allow rescue. And there is the emergency winder. The service, since closing after the decimation of the mining industry, has saw an increase in its profits by 30%, and staff has increased by 11%, and now trains people in modern day rescue techniques for underground rescue like the fire service, and businesses in first aid and health and safety. And there is the emergency winder, which would have lowered down the shaft instead of the main cage, and men would have come up in twos. So moving on further up Woodhouse Road, there is a famous shop, On Your Bike, where many people would have got their bikes from. And there is the Black Bull Public House, a very well-known local public house. And you can see in the background is the railway bridge that connects Mansfield to Mansfield Woodhouse Station, and the line starts in Nottingham and goes through to Worksop on a daily basis. So there is the original colours of the public house, and as you can see, the Mansfield beer logo. This site was formerly the site of a pub known as the Woodpecker, a single-storey structure and very famous in its day with live entertainment. And there is one of the only pictures I could find of the public house. So we continued up Woodhouse Road and we find the home of Mansfield Community Radio, 103.2 on the FM dial, and there is its transmitting antenna, which allows you to air glorious FM stereo from this site. So we're coming to the end of this journey. The objectives were met for the journey in discovering could I get down the river. At this time, unfortunately, I was unable to do it, but still determined to try it again when the paths have been cut back, allowing me to explore the paths and hopefully get into Forest Town or Clipston via River Maun. Today's adventure will take you between 90 minutes and 2 hours at 4 miles an hour, the legal limit for the roads. Episode 4, I go back and explore the viaducts over the River Maun, starting my journey again at Field Mill Ponds. This episode was filmed on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Voiceover and sound was the DLZ Curator. Post-production was Final Cut Pro. via Apple. All images used in this are the property of the respected owner and consent was obtained. This episode was produced on the 15th of June 2025 as part of my mobility scooter adventures.